Dear devotees, lovely to be here once again on this Thursday on the wilderness of the jungle of Kurg, and lovely to experience this nature with you, and side by side what else can we have with the Vedanta and the Kriya Yoga discussions, and sharing a bit of the knowledge that we are picking up on our way. The knowledge itself, the epistemology, we shall just come upon it. Epistemology is the science of knowing the knowledge itself. And look it up, it's very interesting, and it's an international baccalaureate, very famous, called Theory of Knowledge. Before we start, let us start with our salutations to our Divine Mother, to Babaji, Krishna, Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, to our Gurudevas, Paramahansa Yogananda, Sri Sri Yukteswar Giri Lahiri Mahasaya, Sri Sri Swami Vivekananda, the Jnana Avatar, Sri Sri Holy Mother, the Mother of the Universe, called the Mother Saraswati herself, and Paramahansa Ramakrishna. Bless us all, guide us through this process so that we may in this life alone go across the darkness of mind and be illumined. Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityurma amritam gamaya. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May the Divine Mother of the Universe, may gods and goddesses, saints of all religion, and our beloved Gurudevas guide us, hold our hand, and take us across from unreal to real, from darkness of ignorance to wisdom of light and knowledge, and very beautifully apt to the topic of today's questions which I have received, and take us from death to immortality. Think about these questions what we have today, reflect upon them, and let's discuss in detail on Sunday. The question comes in, the Supreme Brahman, the enlightenment, the knowledge of Brahman, the knowledge of consciousness is beyond all, and the knowledge itself, the consciousness itself cannot reveal itself. It is there, it is, and it can only be revealed through the Maya, through the play of mind. But how can mind do that when mind is so limited, and mind can only reflect an object of the world, and Supreme Consciousness is not an object, it is the subject. This is the first question. And the second question is related similarly, which comes in that I'm totally at a loss. How am I going to ever realize Brahman, the Supreme Consciousness, which is far beyond the mind, and the mind at all necessary for me, or what we keep hearing, to go beyond the mind, then only you can go and attain the consciousness. How do I go beyond the mind? Both the questions are related to the same, called Kaivalya, self-realization, Bodhisattva, Moksha, Nirvana, and many such terms in various religions is explained. Then let us first see understanding Supreme Brahman, the Supreme Consciousness, is what is it? Understanding the Supreme Consciousness is nothing else but gaining that knowledge of Brahman, acquiring the supreme wisdom of knowledge of Brahman. First, the foundation. What is acquiring knowledge and how do we acquiring knowledge? And then we'll come into the role of the mind. There are Vedanta Paribhasa. There is this question was asked long time ago, that does the mind at all have any role to play in attaining the Brahma Gyan? And the same question has come up again today by another two of the devotees. So, understand first, gaining any knowledge is called the science of epistemology, or Vedantic epistemology is what we are talking about in the Vedanta Paribhasha. Now, let's say I am gaining the knowledge of this beautiful mountain, the trees, the lake, the sky. How am I doing it? Let's say a rose or a plant. Let's take a plant. I see this plant. What is happening? When I see the plant, it's not coming and entering my eye. In that case, there will be utter emergency. You have to dial 911. So the light is reflecting on the plant. If it is totally darkness, I can't see the plant. So light is reflecting on the plant. The light reflected off the plant is coming and entering the cornea of my eye. And as it comes in through the lenses of my eye, the light itself is changing into an image. Now that image is through the optical nerve. It's being sent to the brain as what? Not as an image anymore. It is through tiny bits of sparks of electricity. That electricity is going into the brain, and now the brain is sending that to the mind. Now the mind doesn't know anything, but mind is now getting enlightened by the consciousness which is all around. Mind itself can't do anything. Consciousness by itself cannot do anything. But consciousness, when it reflects on the mind attains something called reflected consciousness. That reflected consciousness illuminates the mind and tells the mind that is a plant or this is a rose. A big process that you have to go through. But the whole thing to see a plant or a flower is a big thing which is happening, but it is happening all split of a second, fraction of a second. In the Vedanta Paribhasha, when you go further, it goes ahead and explains, which I am not going into the detail, but it goes ahead, the mind, when it comes into the mind and mind reflects through the reflective consciousness of the infinite consciousness to the mind as a reflective consciousness, mind goes and engulfs that object through the senses, and it removes what is called the avarana of the object. So a rope which was looking like a snake, which was veiled, avarana, is through the vikshepa is getting projected back again as a rope as I throw the light onto that rope. Rope reveals as a rope and not a snake anymore because avarana is removed. Now this is as per Vedanta Paribhasha, but I'm not getting into that detail, but you should know that's the truth. So now what is happening? The mind has got illuminated by reflective consciousness, which in turn has given the projection of the plant, and I know now, I get the knowledge. of the plant. I get the knowledge of the mountain or anything on this universe. This is in a technical term called vritti vyapti. What is vritti vyapti? Is when the flower or the plant reflects, comes as an image through the light, to the image, to the electrical impulses, to the brain, and in turn the mind gets it. It's called vritti vyapti. What is vritti? In Vivekananda's word, when you throw a stone into this lake, it'll create ripples. Similarly, this whole universe is continuously creating through the five senses and the mind ripples in our mind. And it is continuously, rapidly thinking of this, thinking about that, and the millions of things that we are thinking all the time. Vritti, ripples are happening. That is why it makes yours and my meditation so difficult. We cannot sit still. We cannot keep the mind still, because that is how we close the senses so that it doesn't come and create the ripple. That is called vritti. Vritti is a ripple in the lake of the mind. Now, vritti vyapti, when I acquire that vritti and understand it to be a flower. Now, how do I gain the knowledge? Is when the reflective consciousness lights up that part of the mind with the vritti. It's called phala vyapti. So, how do I gain the knowledge? Phala vyapti, because of vritti vyapti. So, vritti vyapti followed by phala vyapti. Little technical term, but just very simple. It's very simple at all. The moment these two things happen, I see a rose, I see a mountain, I see this plant. Okay? Now, this is what is happening in terms of knowing. Now, let's look at an example. In our school days, when we were playing with the little tiffin carriers and little breakfast time, at the snack time, you remember this stainless steel tiffin carriers shining, and after we used to finish eating, we used to play the fool by showing that reflecting light onto another boy, onto their eye and things like that. So similarly is happening today. Let's take another example. Imagine the sun is the consciousness, is coming into directly onto the earth and showing the earth to us. What happens at night? At night, let us say it's a full moon light. At night, the sun's light goes onto the moon reflects in a full moon light, which in turn glorifies the earth. And we see the earth because of the moon's light falling on the earth. But we know that the moon's light is not its own light, it is the sun's light coming to the moon, and moon is turned to the earth. And earth object vritti vyapti becomes phala vyapti. We know this is an object in the moonlit night at night. Now, question comes in about the mind stuff comes in. What happens when it's a eclipse happens? The moon comes in between the sun and the earth. Now the moon is not turned anymore to the earth. The moon is turned back into the sun. What does that mean? I am lighting with my tiffin carrier little box onto the people's eye and playing fool with them. But can I reflect that light back into the sun to show the sun? Of course, it is a foolish thing. It is like showing a torch to the sun and showing the sun with my torch. Can I show the sun with my torch on a full moonlit, a full day in a bright day? Or showing at night a candle light to show the moon? I cannot. So, it is a foolhardy question. Now, The mind is getting reflected by the reflective consciousness of the sun. What happens in terms of understanding nirvana? In an eclipse, the moon is turned back into the sun. Earth is totally in the darkness. Mind is totally in the darkness. Now, when did the mind get illuminated? Mind, through this, the moon's light back into the sun, is not getting the moonlight. So what do? We create some vritti vyapti. How do we do that? Shravanam, mananam, nididhyasanam. Why does the earth get darkened? Eclipse, the simile of we are too busy, our mind is too busy going in for physical thing, money, property, food, sensual enjoyments. So mind is in the darkness. Mind is not ready to receive the wisdom or the knowledge. So mind is in darkness. What do? Shravanam, mananam, nididhyasanam. Right now when you're listening to my words of the Vedanta, it's creating little ripples in your and creating vritti. It is creating an enlightenment from Vishaya. What Paramahansa Ramakrishna is to pray, Vishaya Virag, Ishvara Anurag. Let my mind have focused attention toward God and detachment from this world. The detachment is equivalent to the lunar eclipse when moon is turned back into the sun. Can I say that the sun is getting illuminated by the moon's light? That's foolhardy, isn't it? Because the moon's light itself does not belong to the moon. It belongs to the sun. And the sun's light is coming into the moon and going back into the sun in the eclipse time. Earth is in the darkness. So we are, during this darkness time, need to create in our mind Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam. So the answering and for you to reflect upon deeply on this for further discussion is mind is certainly required for the vritti vyapti. Through the five senses, through the mind, when it gets the reflection of Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, it creates the ripples of knowledge of the Vedanta. Once we understand the Vedantic knowledge, we are now getting illuminated. Now, am I illuminating the sun, the consciousness? Equivalent to the sun is the consciousness. Am I illuminating the consciousness with my knowledge? No. Here is the mind is not required because the sun or the consciousness equivalent, simile, is called Swaprakasha. It is self-illumined. The sun does not need to be illuminated by a torch or a candlelight or the moon's light. It gets illuminated by itself. It's Swaprakasha. Consciousness is Swaprakasha. So, reflect on these. A short, beautiful, powerful, big question. In the attainment of nirvana, does the mind have a role to play? Yes, it does. Without the mind, you cannot attain. But just like the sun cannot be illumined by the torchlight or a candlelight, or in the eclipse time, sun falls on the moon and it gets reflected back into the moon, back into the sun. Sun is not getting illuminated by its own light reflecting from the moon. It is Swaprakasha. So there is no, understand this part of it, and question should come to your mind. It's called there is no phala vyapti in Brahmagyan because consciousness is Swaprakasha. Sun is Swaprakasha. But for vritti vyapti, name is little technical, nothing else. Creating the rapport, exciting the mind, wanting to know more, and doing Shravanam, reflection, asking question, studying a little more, doing Nididhyasana meditation to attain this oneness towards what? Getting illuminated with the consciousness. Consciousness is self-illumined. The mind needs to be illumined with that consciousness. When we do that, a direct connection happens, then the mind drops off. And this is what is meant by going beyond the mind. But initially, mind is certainly required. Have a happy hunting for your questions and answers, and wish you a beautiful search and journey to the knowledge. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.